Hi everybody, my name is Kimberly Addison and I am one of the co-founders of 57 Chocolate. So 57 Chocolate is the pioneer bean-to-bar artisanal manufacturing company located right here in Accra, Ghana. And so what we do is we take Ghana's cocoa and we transform it into luxurious chocolate and confections that reflect the Ghanaian art and culture as well as African art and culture. Neither me or my other co-founder, who is my sister as well, we don't have any background in chocolate making. We both studied French and international relations. And so how the idea came is that we were both living in Switzerland, and I particularly remember getting restless being at a 9-to-5 job every day and just feeling like I wanted to create something. And we come from a home where our parents love business and love Africa, of course. And so I spoke to my dad about this, and he encouraged us to think about going into entrepreneurship. Now, to be honest, it sounded fancy, it sounded lovely. I don't think I really knew what it took to be an entrepreneur at the time, but it still sounded great. So what I did was I told my dad that, okay, when you plan on retiring and moving back to Ghana, then I will come with you and start a business. And Priscilla was on board too. And so about 3 to 5 months after that initial conversation, I came home one day from work and my dad said to me, guess what? And I said, what? And he said, I retired. He's like, it looks like we're moving to Ghana. And I was like, whoa, okay. So I stayed true to my promise, and that same week I ended up resigning and preparing to move to Ghana. The ironic thing is we didn't have a business idea yet. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest that path for people. But one thing that was really special was about 2 weeks before moving back to Ghana, a group of friends from church invited me to visit a chocolate factory, sort of as a last hurrah, fun thing to do together before I leave. And I remember very distinctly that the first part of the tour was a display of where that particular company would source all their beans from. And of course, the two largest displays, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. And so that was really the sort of shocking moment for me, because we had lived in Switzerland for 8 years, eaten a lot of chocolate, given chocolate as gifts to people. And it never really occurred to us where the main ingredient was really coming from. And the very fact that it was coming from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, from West Africa, was shocking, because we would come home to Ghana for vacation, for visits, and we would be rather the ones bringing chocolate from Switzerland to Ghana for people. And it sort of hit us that, hey, it should be the other way around. We should be bringing chocolate from Ghana to Switzerland for people. But it wasn't like that. And so we realized that there was untapped potential, that, you know, Ghana was once the first largest producer of cocoa and is now the second largest producer. Yet we're not really known for our chocolate. The world knows us for our cocoa. So we decided, you know what, we want to try and change that and, you know, move back to Ghana and start a chocolate business that would be world-class and that would show people around the world that great quality chocolate can come from where the cocoa grows here in Africa. So when we moved back here, the first thing was, it wasn't about, okay, now we're back, so we're starting the business. There had to be a huge learning curve. Like I said earlier, we had zero background in chocolate making. We knew very little about cocoa except that it grows in Ghana. And so one of the first things we did was we started learning. We did online courses. We came here, we visited farms, we spoke to people in the industry, not only people locally, but also people abroad in different parts of the world, letting them know what we wanted to do and seeking advice from people who knew the industry better than us. And we spent a lot of time reading books. And we also, I ended up getting an apprenticeship and learning from an amazing couple who makes chocolate in the UK. And I was able to acquire skills in chocolate making, and then also was able to teach Priscilla those skills as well. We started with tabletop machines, and we adapted So we worked with a budget because we still had to test out the market and see if our chocolate would be any good. We couldn't assume that, straight off the bat, our first, batch of chocolate would be this amazing thing. And so that's what we did. So we started, we got our beans, we used a kitchen oven, and we started the process, and we made our first batch. And you know what? It wasn't terrible. It's not as good as it is today, but it was a start, and we started testing it with friends and family, making tweaks here and there with our recipe and our formulations. And then not too long after that, April, an amazing family friend took a chance on us and ordered chocolate for her wedding. And we did that, and from that wedding we were able to get more clients, and it started to spread via word of mouth then. And then we got on social media as well, and via social media we were able to get our first international client as well. So we used the tools that we had. We didn't necessarily go buying any fancy, business software, business tools. We started with what we had and what was available. It's been a gradual process. So yes, so initially it was Priscilla and I in the factory, just the two of us, and I think it was like that for a solid year. And then within a year we hired our first employee, and that also started to grow things. We started to expand, we started to get more orders, especially like I mentioned before. There was sort of like there was a chain effect from the initial wedding that we did, where there was a lot of people who were at that wedding, and we ended up getting another wedding from that wedding, and so it grew. And so as our clientele grew, and as we got feedback from customers, from family and friends, we began to tweak our recipes. We began to modify some of the things that we were doing to improve our product, and we began to grow. And then fast forward a few years later, now we employ about 10 people, and yeah, we're still growing. And so now, as opposed to when we first started, you can find us in a few stores locally, and you can also find us abroad. And initially we didn't start off exporting. Like I said, it was when we got our first international client that we were able to start exporting, and then we weren't necessarily shipping. It was, maybe friends or family who were traveling to that place who would bring the product. But then as we grew to understand the business and logistics, we then started shipping via DHL, and now we export all over the world, and we're able to maintain the cold chain of our products, making sure that they don't melt and that they arrive to our customers in good condition. So the reality is it's going to be tough. It's, a lot of, articles and even videos portray it as this, glamorous life. It's not all that glamorous. It's tough, and, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears, a lot of heartache will go into it, a lot of frustration will go into it, and especially doing business in this part of the world, where systems can be challenging, you have to learn to adapt, and you have to learn to get creative. For example, even with us, breaking the cocoa bean, right? We now have a machine that does this, a cocoa crusher. But initially, what we had to use was a good old-fashioned home rolling pin and our hands to break open the cocoa beans. We couldn't necessarily afford a huge machine, or especially with importation. So it's learning to realize that you have to adapt, and maybe you might not be able to afford a certain machine yet, but find something that can still do the same job as what you need that machine to do, if that makes sense. Yeah, I would say a big part of it is adapting and understanding the context in which you are doing business. So for example, we lived in Switzerland. Things are done very differently than here in Ghana. Things might move faster in Switzerland, things move a little slower here in Ghana. So it's really learning to adapt and understand the context of the environment in which you're doing business, and also being willing to learn. When you need help, ask other people, do a lot of research. One thing that we tell ourselves is that we never stop learning. The learning curve, it doesn't stop. you have to keep on learning. Even now we're still learning. So to better improve our products, to better improve our services, and to better improve our business in general. So what makes it worth it is the very fact that it's our why, and why we are doing this is because we want to create jobs, we want to see Ghana develop, we want to see Ghana become a manufacturing hub. 57, that's the name of our company, and it stands for 1957, which is Ghana's independence. And it's not just about the fact that we were free from colonial power, but it's more about the spirit behind independence and what was happening in Ghana shortly after independence. And in the early 1960s, Ghana was highly industrious. I believe that we were actually economic equals with South Korea, which is amazing because today South Korea is considered a developed country, and Ghana, we're still considered underdeveloped. And back then, when we were actually economic equals with South Korea, Ghana was producing. We had tomato factories, we had a thriving dairy industry. No dairy industry in Ghana today. We had so many, we had textile industries. There was so much that was going on in Ghana. So many things that we were producing. But then shortly after, in the late 1960s, Ghana shifted to becoming a highly importation-centered country where we import everything, importing things that we can, even grow. Tomatoes grow in Ghana, yet we import tomatoes. Tomatoes grow in Ghana, yet most of the tomato paste and tomato products, they're not made here in Ghana. So our why is saying, hey, we have this resource, cocoa, that was once the main commodity, but is now, I believe, in the top 3 of Ghana's main commodities. And what are we doing with that? Are we just exporting it in its raw form, or are we transforming it, not just into chocolate, but into the various things that can be done with cocoa? There's so much, it's so versatile. So that's our why, and in our doing that, we're able to keep the money within Ghana, grow Ghana's economy, create jobs, give young people skills. And I mean, it's quite ironic. You would think, as the second largest producer of cocoa, that there would be this sort of skill set and training for young people and chocolate and cocoa and knowing how to work with it. But it's not there yet, and we hope to see that grow, and we hope to be a part of that growth. So in a nutshell, that's our why. If Ghana is just exporting its raw material, its cocoa, and importing finished chocolate, it doesn't benefit the economy whatsoever. What needs to happen is Ghana needs to start taking its raw cocoa and processing it into semi-finished products and processing it into chocolate, because then it gets to a point where we're just importing heavily, and the prices are expensive to even buy. And you just end up with what we have right now, where when you go to a grocery store, most of the chocolate you see in a Ghanaian grocery store is not even Ghanaian chocolate. It's foreign chocolate, and that shouldn't be the case. And then that also portrays to people that, okay, maybe Ghanaian chocolate isn't all that great, if they're not seeing it in supermarkets. So, and that's something that's a stigma that we also had to fight, in the sense that when we started adding value to cocoa and making a finished product out of it, making chocolate bars out of it, people were initially quite skeptical, because a lot of people feel like, made in Africa, I prefer Swiss chocolate, or I prefer, chocolate from the UK. And so when we start producing more and consuming more of our products, it will help boost the economy. It'll help encourage other people to go into industries and start creating, not only with cocoa, but with the many resources that we have here in Ghana. So for 57, there are a few things that set us apart. One of the things that we pride ourselves in are that we use our chocolate to educate, and we use our chocolate to promote African culture and art. So you'll see that we have our Adinkra symbols, and Adinkra symbols are known to Ghana, and they have different meanings. They're proverbial meanings. So one of my favorites is Aya, which means resourcefulness and endurance. And you see the Adinkra symbols everywhere. You can see them on textiles, you can see them on furniture, you can see them everywhere. And so in so doing, we're teaching people about Ghanaian culture, and it's a fun way to do that. When people see amazing symbols and they learn about them, they get to know Ghana more. And also on our packaging, we feature different places in Ghana, and so a lot of our clients, even abroad, have told us that they feel like they've traveled to Ghana without having to actually travel. And additionally, we're not just making a sugary treat. What we try to do is feature Ghana's cocoa, and so you'll see that in our milk and our dark chocolate bars, that cocoa is the first ingredient. It's not sugar. We're also playing with Ghanaian flavors. So we have our sobolo or our bisap flavored chocolate, we have our moringa flavored chocolate, and we also use local ingredients such as toasted coconut as well. So yeah, so those are some of the things that set us apart. So 5 years from now, we want to continue growing. We want to continue expanding our production. You'll get a lot more products from us. We plan to explore everything that cocoa can be used for. So you'll begin to see a diversification of our products. And yeah, we also hope to expand our production in our factory, where people can actually come and have proper tours and see the process and learn, and also start a training school as well.